Okay, so that's what I was just like. Okay. Good to see you too. And thank you. That was one thing. That's probably because I just go yeah, I would take cash or something, without knowing what it is.
Just give us a beat and then see if folks can hear you. Okay. My boss Karen, so
I'm gonna test this out. Help. So I can't. They can't hear me in the mic. So the Zoom can't hear me. Zoom the. So we're fine. Can y'all? Is this? Am I speaking at a good tone?
the speaker's not working over here. So you see if you move ahead with just speaking from.
Oh yeah, I think everybody's voice is strong enough to amplify.
Because they haven't hooked up the sound, they're not gonna be able to hear it. Okay. Do you have the? Nope. You don't have the. Let's see. I'm logged in, so I guess I could have just went to Zoom.
I tell you, your daughter has just
Dr. Swoop, I need the Zoom link. Hold on.
shortly. Our overhead mics are not working, so when we speak up, let's do so loudly so we can hear each other without the benefit of the overhead speakers. There are a couple of changes that are making in the order of business this morning. We'll have student affairs first, and then we'll go into Tiffany's committee afterwards, governance. So if everything's in order, IT, we can get started.
Good morning, everyone, and
Morning.
welcome to Student Affairs. This morning, we are going to, Dr. Swoop, can you go to the next slide? Okay. This morning, we are going to go over COVID-19 and the Health and Counseling Center, career development services, and student activities and leadership development. So, as we all know, we are still very much so in the thick of COVID-19. And there are a few things that we have continued to do on campus to try to have our prevention efforts and reduce the spread of COVID-19. So, we have continued to do our educational town halls. We offer PPE to various departments on campus. We do temperature monitoring. We have social media informational posts. Masks are mandatory. We offer sanitizers. There are sanitizing stations in every building. We promote the vaccine every opportunity that we can. There are air purifiers in the classrooms, social distancing in the classrooms, and cleaning protocols have been enhanced in the residence halls. So our current testing guidance is diagnostic testing. And so what that means is we are testing individuals who have symptoms of COVID-19, who have been directly exposed to COVID-19, and people who may have attended any type of large gathering. We are doing COVID-19 testing on them as well. Screening testing. This is the type of testing that we will be doing upon re-entry in January. What this means is every employee, faculty, staff, and student will be tested before they are allowed to return to campus. Quarantine and isolation. We have received a lot of questions about the difference between the two. Isolation means that you are positive for COVID-19. If you live within 400 miles of the campus, you are asked to isolate off campus at home for 10 to 14 days. If you live further than 400 miles, you are able to stay on campus and isolate in a dorm room. Quarantine means that you have been in close contact, so you were exposed to someone who has COVID-19. If you are vaccinated, you are allowed to move about, but you have to be masked and test within 3 to 5 days of your exposure. If you are not vaccinated, you must remain in your dorm room until you produce a negative test 10 days after your exposure. To help with the students that are on quarantine and isolation, we have a quarantine and isolation prevention and response team. So this team helps with meal delivery. They monitor the students daily. They offer counseling services, and they let us know of any issues or concerns that the students may have who are on quarantine and isolation. And we are still, as I said, promoting the vaccine. On campus, we have a COVID-19 vaccine clinic. Vaccines are administered on Thursdays on a walk-in basis from 1:30 to 4:30. We switched. Should I mute this? We switched to walk-ins due to underutilization. And so currently we have administered 4,870 doses of the vaccine and counting. We are still fully prepared to continue to vaccinate our campus community and the Huntsville community citizens. So Health and Counseling has been doing a number of programming and events. We offer QPR training to our faculty and staff, which is question, persuade, and refer, that identifies any mental health crisis, any suicide prevention, and they also offer. I don't think they can hear me anymore. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Thank you.
As I was saying, Health and Counseling has provided a lot of programming and events this semester. One of our biggest things is our QPR training, which is question, persuade, and refer, which training that is offered to faculty and staff to be able to identify mental health concerns and suicide prevention and response. We hosted Domestic Violence Awareness Month and COVID conversations that's still going on. We have had COVID conversations with Dr. Letitia Everett and Mr. Tracy Doty, who is the COO of Huntsville Hospital. Suicide awareness and prevention efforts. Laugh and fear your blues away. We did a movie night, we did training, and a social media campaign. And in an effort to promote the vaccine, we have had several vaccine fest block parties. We've offered incentives to our students to get vaccinated, $150 Bluebird gift card, and for our homecoming concert, if you were fully vaccinated, you were able to receive free tickets. These are just more pictures from the event. This chart shows the utilization of medical services. As we discussed in July, our services were being underutilized just due to COVID-19 and the students not being back on campus. We are now seeing a rise in the utilization of services. It is not where we were before COVID, but they are definitely on the rise.
Question on that before we move from that. When you're evaluating that, are you looking at the availability of slots to be seen at the medical center? Because several students have made comments that you try to get in and get an appointment, they're sick today, but they can't get in till next Thursday, or the availability and accessibility to getting in. Have y'all looked at that, and what can we do to provide a more immediate availability to our students?
That has been an issue, but in an effort to mitigate that, we have hired 3 more nurse practitioners, so there's more availability.
Is that being impacted currently, or we anticipate to get better next semester? Or
We anticipate to get better next semester. They just started October 15th. And the same goes for our counseling services. Our numbers were low, but they are starting to increase again. And first of all, we have hired more counselors as well.
How many do we have now? You know the number.
We currently have 2, and we hired 2 additional. So career development services. Career development has really hit the ground running. We have started off with in-person career week and a 2-day virtual career week. everything. Headshots, the number of students.
Seniors to sign up through the career development? I thought at one time that was a basic requirement that you must sign up through the career development center.
It is a requirement, but what we're trying to do is get more students enrolled their freshman year. You know, you kind of wait until the last minute where you have other students who have been interviewing and having internships all semester, all over their 4 years. So we're trying to get them enrolled before their junior and senior year.
One, two, three, let's go. If you graduated,
Hey, what's up, fam? This is Bishop William Murphy. I'm here on the campus of Alabama A&M tonight for homecoming gospel concert. It's time to get back to normal. The presence of God normalizes. Let's go.
Alabama Agricultural and Mechanical University 2021-2022, Ms. Mia Taylor. Thank you. So glad to be here.
Hey there, I'm Erica Campbell, and I am beyond honored to be here with the Bulldogs. We're gonna have a good time. I believe it. You?
Remove who shouldn't be here. Replace them with somebody who is supposed to be here. If the relationship is broken, you can repair it.
We would miss you dearly. Rest up. Peace, brother.
Yo, it is your man, C.O. Mancedis, a.k.a. Mr. Cut the Beat. And right now I'm at Alabama A&M for their homecoming. It's super lit.
As soon as y'all see it, I need to know who's gonna play, all right?
It's your man, J. Deuce, a.k.a. Deuce, a.k.a. Mr. You look familiar. You know we at Alabama A&M. And you already know how we rock it. It's back to normal. What's going on? It's your boy, Rennie. And we at the Alabama A&M University homecoming.
Give it up to Ronnie Jordan.
Your boy, comedian Ronnie Jordan. Here for the comedy show is going up, and I love this school so much. I took the A off. Don't say nothing to me. I wanted to have something to put on the back of my hoodie if that was big enough.
Shout out to my dog right here. You got a BLM, a body like mine. Shout out to y'all.
Alabama A&M, it's your boy, comedian Benji Brown, a.k.a.
King, we got a daughter.
And we back to normal. Tap in.
This is Homecoming 2021.
Can everyone hear me? Yes, sir. All right. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm Giddy. I'm the SGA president. So a couple of updates coming from the Student Government Association. Number one, we had our September 2nd.
Can't hear.
Can you hear me now? Yes.
We can hear you without the mic. Oh.
You hear? All right. I'm gonna get it in. Can everyone hear me? All right. So as stated, the Student Government Association held in-person SGA installation where we store in all members of our Student Government Association on September the 2nd. We had a guest speaker, Attorney Mark Devereaux. This is basically give a speech on leadership, and he gave good words of wisdom to us about leading, especially through this pandemic. On top of that, we had the in-person coordination of the 71st Alabama Agricultural and Mechanical University, Ms. Nia Whitson, the day following on September 3rd. We have filled all vacancies except for one in the Student Government Association, and that would be the National Family Council Senator. We're still working with the National Family Council in my office just to make sure that when we are doing events, we are always in correlation with them. also made several appearances at the first football home game, the Old Coast Challenge, and of course, homecoming. Other updates are we have elected, we did finally finish getting our freshman senators, we elected them back in, I want to say that was in September. They are Faith Ganson and Alexis Powell. Along with that, this freshman was selected, and her name is Dylan. We are currently working with Trustee Jones and Provost Williams. We have set up a subcommittee to basically set a new system called Bulldog Alerts in place. It was something that was started in the Jump Strong administration by Vice President David Strong, and we wanted to fill the commitment she put into that endeavor. So we're working with the faculty senate and of course with Provost Williams to make sure that gets done. Our meeting date for that we set November 1st at 12 o'clock p.m. Other things that I'm personally working on, I want to see, I know this is nothing that can happen on a short-term basis, but the expansion of the parking lot and the new dormitory and new student residence hall. A lot of students, and I looked at all the different incident reports as well in that particular dormitory. There's been a lot of car accidents that are happening there because of it being a little bit, it's over capacity. I know that they met with the administration about getting cameras installed in place, along with that parking within the grass for a short-term basis. But on the long-term basis, I think it would be very prudent if we expanded the parking lot back there so that it'll match the amount of students that are in the residence hall. Another thing that we're working on at SGA is we're working on revamping our constitution, of course, getting it to where we are having a set judicial branch in place, which will work kind of with the student handbook within the realms with judicial affairs, but not in the heavier environment, just regular student handbook violations. Along with that, making other organizational changes to SGA to make sure that we have accomplished everything that the executive branch needs and the legislative branch needs. I've challenged my college senators to hold town halls with the deans of their colleges, and I've challenged the class senators to hold class meetings. The purpose of the town halls is to make sure that one of the biggest things that me and my vice president ran on was making sure that we were the bridge from the college administration to the student body. So we wanted to present that challenge to them so that they can be the bridge. It won't have to be my vice president and I tackling this endeavor, challenging my other members to really see how we can make a connection between the student body and the administration, because it has been apparently challenging in the past. Other than that, I had a meeting with the interim chief of police, Chief Gillis, in regards to DPS and campus safety. We also discussed fall commencement. He wants to have a meeting with me and myself and my senior senators to see how we can make fall commencement still the dignified ceremony, and it won't kind of have what happened in the spring 20 commencement. Yeah, spring 20 commencement, spring 21. You know. Other than that, we're still holding more events on campus, in person and virtual, just to make sure that we are keeping our campus engaged and trying to keep them away from outside sources of entertainment, just keep them on campus so that we can keep the pandemic under control. Some of the working initiatives that I'm trying to work on, and I'm working on currently, is the Black Male Initiative. We had our first meeting on last Tuesday, just to trying to set a theme and other things to other topics that we want to discuss in it. One of the biggest things we want to talk about is mental health in the Black male community. So we will have to set out pay for that and an initiative and for that newspaper plan. Another thing that I'm working on is a 40% vaccination initiative, meaning that I want 40% before we go home, and along with that, if we can get 40% after that, after we return, the basis of 40% came from, basically kind of around, I based it off of the state's average and listening to Dr. Fauci, he said back in, a year ago that we reached 70% of, 70% vaccination, we can return to regular life. So I kind of based off state Alabama's vaccination rate is around 30%. So I kind of based that off of 40% more off of that vaccination rate here in the state and kind of equated it to Alabama and the last initiative I want to work on is the voter registration initiative. We've done a tremendous job in the past with voter registration and civic engagement. I think we're one of the leading institutions that have tackled both issues. So I just want to see, for me, I want to see the majority of our campus get registered to vote because we do have midterms coming up within a year.
Are we still on student affairs? Question, what is our plan or anticipation for this upcoming spring regarding on-campus activities? Homecoming week was awesome. It was well-planned, well-attended, but I know we had a reduction up until this point on student activities on campus because of COVID. So the question is our plan or our philosophy going to be the same, or are we looking at increasing activities? The reason why I'm asking is because of what we're seeing, an increase in incidents that are happening in HBCUs. And I know we have all of our housing full to capacity. If we're going to be able to offer or increase more activities for our students, so therefore they don't have to go off campus, we're just trying to minimize potential incidents if at all possible, if we're hosting more things on campus. So what is our philosophy going forward into the spring? So is it that you guys are going to have a plan A and a plan B? So instead of just waiting till that time, y'all have a plan for both?
I just want to say that video was great. And we should be using clips of that on social media as marketing and recruitment, because it really was drawing me in to the fun things that were going on campus. It was really good.
I do have one question for trustee party man Smith. Based on that cameo shot, were you actually having more fun than you're willing to admit to?
Uh-huh.
Well, I mean, you only got a snippet. Yeah, you only got a snippet of my dance moves and my general interactions. But yeah, dance moves. I was, I love a good electric slide. I was out there strolling a little bit. I was doing whatever needed to be done to hype up my school.
That's awesome. Thank you.
The philosophy is, give the students, and for those of us in different age groups, and I've just come to the conclusion, I don't even get involved in it. It's what they like to do, as long as they're safe and they're enjoying themselves, fine. I don't try to understand the music, I don't understand it because I simply am not in that range, but I want them to have a good time, enjoy themselves, so that's what they want.
I'll get him out on the dance floor at one point in time before he leaves out of here. We're gonna do a. He can. I've seen it. We've done it. I know. I'm done.
Yeah, Brittany, I have a question for you. Well done on your engagement with our students. It seemed that everyone was having a great time, not just the students, but also our guests, our celebrity guests that attended the event that also felt the passion of this institution. Are we working, or are you guys working closely with the marketing team to kind of figure out what are the impressions? Because most of the entertainers that you brought and guest speakers that you brought, even from the gospel to secular, they have millions of followers. What are we doing as an institution to tap in on that social explosion? Because that's also free opportunity for us to get ourselves out there. And how are we piggybacking off of this amazing opportunity that any student that come here can go anywhere? How are we doing that with what you're providing? Because I agree with Trustee Cole, it is an engaging video. You know, you stop what you're doing and you just want to be like, wow, why wasn't I on the quad when I was here? So just kind of tell us, if not, or how can we help making sure that you guys are aligned to get that message out there? Yeah, because there's a way you do that, because they're doing it for voter registrations and kind of figuring out, you know, with the millennials and Gen X, how do you get those to vote? So if you tap onto like even our site, how many new people are coming in daily, or how many people, if we are on their site connected, if they tap us, how are we tracking that? So that would be something good to maybe look into next year, and to make sure when you come back and do a presentation, to kind of let us know the number of impressions per this event, what outside people were able to also track us that can also help with our enrollment.
Is there an initiative to include the current students on the campus to share our social media, such as videos like this? So for instance, I know our staff here at the university, we do a good job trying to put it out, but I guarantee you, they can be able to circulate it in their circles and potentially to recruit new students to come to the university. So is there an initiative to include, encourage the current students to try to share, number one, have access to it, and number two, to share it? Is there any type of initiative or program that addresses that? And I think to Trustee Gaines's point, if we kind of look at that data and the analytics of it, then we'll be able to see how well, how successful. Right now, I don't know if it's measurable.
Yeah.
To be able to say how well or how poorly we're doing. We think we're doing a good job, but could we be doing better?
Because I think that's probably something marketing needs to be looking at, really, the data analytics and how to partner the departments to make sure what you all are doing, that message is getting out and getting shared. And even with athletics, you know, if athletics is using some of what they do as a marketing piece, that's kind of how everybody needs to kind of collaborate and work together to make sure that we're maximizing our bang. But I think Dr. Holloman mentioned earlier in the presentation about using students as brand influencers.
Yeah.
And I can say I have every now and then searched the hashtag AAMU or some of the hashtags, and it's interesting what you'll find video-wise on some of these Instagram pages of students. And there are a couple who, in fact, I started following one because I said it'll be a good place to see what's really going on campus, because I mean he's on top of everything that's going on.
Gotcha.
But I definitely think marketing probably needs to really hone in on that data analytics piece.
Do you think the current students who hold positions, i.e. our SGA, our student ambassadors, is that included as a requirement to be able to share? Because I know it's,
It's like a
you know,
role as
exactly.
their roles and responsibilities.
It's part of their role and
to be
responsibilities.
sharing and utilizing certain hashtags and that kind of
Right, and I think if we added that officially, you know, that might be something that we can do to spur.
Yeah, we do. I
So since they're already doing it, let's just put a line on it. They're already doing it, so let's just give them credit for what they're doing.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Impressions, because she deals with the social media platforms from a university standpoint and shares pretty much everything that we have going, not just from the students aspect. And Austin, in his capacity as SGA, encourages his staff along with the students on how to and when to, and they have been a big part of our marketing piece. So this has been tremendous for us these last couple of years, but Deborah can provide that data to see that, the impressions. And even with the recruitment, from the recruitment standpoint, they have that piece along with that. And we normally share everything we do, from the videos to what you guys are going to see today. It's out there. So when you Google it, you'll see it. If you're on all the various platforms, which I'm not, there's a Snapchat, there's an Instagram, there's a Facebook, there's so many other platforms that they utilize. And then you have other institutions that say, hey, we saw you guys were doing this, plus the promoters, plus the artists. So I think we're very well spread out in that, but to get an actual internal impressions, I think Deborah Daniels can provide that, hopefully.
And I will get with. I've been watching your virtual town hall series. Our university is trying to start our town hall student assistance. So people are watching and they're seeing what we're doing.
Is this video and our other videos produced internally or externally? And if externally, are our students involved in that process?
This particular video is produced externally, but a lot of our other videos are produced by students.
I guess, is that the end of your report? Okay, well, we definitely appreciate you. And just to make note, I think she mentioned it, I think it was in the beginning of the presentation as to who the committees are, but I co-chair, who the committee members are, but I co-chair this committee along with Trustee Chris Robinson. Thank you, excellent job.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
And I just wanted to start out acknowledging, because it is on my first slide, I do not have Trustee Cole as the co-chair. Recognizing President Vivian.
And she's a judge too.
No, we already had this conversation yesterday, so she know better.
Well, it gives me great pleasure. Am I controlling? It gives me great pleasure to be able to present updates to you from the enrollment management arm of student affairs. And we are going to start our first update with the Office of Admissions, directed by total, we had a combined total of undergraduate and graduate first-time students, 1,774. That's 1,477 undergraduates and 297 graduates. Our total number of first-time registrants was 1,889 in 2020 and 1,784 in 2019. Our transfer numbers experienced a steady climb over a three-year trend. Fall 2021 yielded a total of 207 transfer students in comparison to fall 2020's 174 and fall 2019's 114. And we were pleased to see this steady movement despite challenges presented by the pandemic. We had 3,932 continuing students this fall, which is about 134 more than the 3,798 in fall of 2020. We had 47 readmits and 9 non-degree or transient students this fall. While we did not yield previous high totals in certain categories, we worked very hard to narrow the margin between this year and previous years through aggressively engaging students via phone calls, texts, emails, and virtually to encourage application completion. We had calling campaigns with the assistance of a third-party program known as Trellis Student Success. Next slide. So our final number of accepted applications for 2021 was 7,139, down from 9,028 in 2020 and 9,039 in 2019. Hence, there were incomplete applications and total inquiries also experienced a deficit. There was a total of 2,552 in-state and out-of-state ACT and or SAT waivers, which exceeds fall 2020's total of 2,414 by about 138 students. Next slide. So one of the things that we most appreciate is that opportunities for on-site, in-person, or boots-to-the-ground recruitment is now happening, although with caution. As you can see, the number of on-site college fairs attended pre-COVID in 2019 was 364, and nearly 300 were attended in 2020. However, everything was pushed into a fully virtual platform in 2021, and the enrollment team attended 320 virtual events in 2021. Mr. Green and the team are very excited about upcoming events for term 2022. We have high school senior day scheduled for November 6th at AAMU, and as of yesterday, there were 1,132 high school students registered to attend. Mr. Green is currently in town with staff to attend the Magic City Classic Counselors Luncheon and 9 Frederick area high school blitzes. We also have major metro US city high school blitzes that are going on now through February 2022. They're going to be touching major Alabama city high schools for counselor and student evening events, November through December in the areas of Huntsville, Tuscaloosa, Mobile, Montgomery, Anniston, Opelika, Dothan, and Demopolis. We will also continue our 10th annual scholarship recognition and promotional tour from February or March, and we're going to have our first ever Metro Atlanta area scholarship recognition and promotional tour set to happen in March. We also have our open house scheduled for spring, either March or April. Next slide. Okay, our next update is coming from the Office of Financial Aid, directed by Mr. Darrell Jackson. And our financial aid office continues to uphold its mission to make quality education both possible and affordable for our students. Next slide. Here's some fast facts about financial aid and scholarships for the fall 2022
290 recipients were allocated federal financial aid funding. Over 1,350 qualified students were awarded some level of academic scholarship funding, and 1,296 were awarded in fall 2020. We have about 89% of our student population receiving some type of financial aid, and this is in comparison to about 85% in fall 2020. Over $37.5 million in federal Title IV money, real money, and funding is dispersed to qualified students. This is in comparison to about $33.9 million in fall 2020. Next slide. So our cumulative total of dispersed Pell Grant money, $9,689,253.15. And we had almost 5,000 students that were receiving Pell Grant funding in fall of 2021. The average amount that's dispersed to our students is about $2,176. Next slide. This data is pulled from a 2020 report from U.S. News and World Report, and it's just showing comparative analysis of peer institutions as to the percentage of students receiving financial aid funding. I know the print is kind of small, but you've got Alabama University up top, comparing numbers with Tennessee State, Tuskegee, UAH, Jackson State, Alabama State, and Southern University. AAMU is around 89%, Tennessee State at 91%, Tuskegee at 83%, UAH 52%, Jackson State at 84%, Alabama State at 93%, and Southern University at 87%. So you see that we run rather closely to our peer institutions as far as the number of students that receive. Next slide. So some of the initiatives that financial aid is having in place in regards to COVID-19, implementing a call scheduling system called Qs. And we also refer to it as virtual lines. This is something that's not only happening with financial aid, but other departments that have high traffic or high volume. And this was in efforts to reduce the traffic of students, because we in the past would have long lines outside of the doors, especially servicing students in financial aid. So students go into the virtual line, they submit their information, and they find out in real time when they're going to get a return phone call from a financial aid counselor who assists them. Students are, however, still permitted to come in person. They can do have inquiries, so it's not like the office is totally closed to in-person contact. We're going to continue implementing this because we found that it's successful. Another initiative is to increase the frequency and breadth of internal outreach efforts. So phone calls, emails, texting programs, and they are also making use of Trello student success with outreach of third party companies. And they're also going to, thank you, next slide. In the future, they're intends to continue working collaboratively with admissions to identify and award scholarships to high academic performers, as well as offer financial assistance to all qualified students. Next slide. And our final report comes from the Office of Community College Relations and Global Initiatives, directed by Dr. Pamela Little. As I shared earlier, enrollment data reveals a steady upward trend from fall 2019 to fall 2020, starting at 114 in 2019 and landing at 207 in fall 2021. The CCRGI staff has worked and continues to work diligently to expand its reach and increase enrollment through a number of activities. Next slide. So they attend
students from the STARS report. And this has been really significant. Dr. Little explained to me how strategically they move, because they get monthly lists from the STARS report from various community colleges, students that are interested in attending Alabama A&M University. Those names of students that expressed interest during the months that are closer to registration, they target. Phone calls, texts, in fact, they layer their approach in reaching out to these students, and they found they had some pretty successful gains from that. They are hosting a virtual transfer information session periodically, and they also co-host high school and community college days. They have recruitment campaigns, project success, enrollment text campaigns. So you heard me talk about project success. I mentioned it several times because we've got various entities across campus that take advantage of project success through shows. They are extremely helpful, especially when you have a small staff or limited staffing in your outreach methods to students. So what the staff is doing as far as reaching out is one thing, but then we got the support of this third party company that goes out to text and phone calls to encourage students to complete their process. So here are some of the student engagement activities for transfer students. There was a meet and greet on September 9th, which I was very pleased to attend. Enjoyed meeting our transfer students and assuring them that they made the right decision to come to Alabama A&M University. We had National Transfer Student Week, which was quite a success. And of course, we got our Transfer Student Association, which is encouraging student engagement. We also have a retention campaign going with this project success story. Next slide. We also engage our international students with a monthly Bulldog International newsletter. We also have orientation for our international students, and I attended this orientation session also with these students, and I take great pride in being able to reach out to all students, but I know I mentioned this, I think, in our last board of trustees meeting. I love some of the activities that they schedule, particularly because of the artsy side of the fashion show that they have. They're actually scheduling another one, but to see some of the culture, the fashion trends from other countries, I love it. There's an optional practical and curricular practical training webinar that took place on the 26th. And International Education Week coming up November 8th through 12th. I encourage you all to tune into some of the activities that are going to take place. And that's it for my end.
I have a question to ask you, please. Back to your transfer student engagement activity. What was the number of students that met in the meeting greet in September 2021, and what was the number of the students for the week of October the 15th in 2021? I mean, you had so can you give us an idea of what was the total number? How did we prosper from those two events? The total number of students that from the transfer students meet and greet on September the 9th.
Okay, I have actually Dr. Little on the Zoom. Dr. Little, do you want to provide an exact number?
Good morning. Didn't hear the question.
The question was the total number of transfer students that showed up for the meet and greet in September. And then
And then also the one for October.
And then also the one for October, the transfer student week. Okay, so our meet and greet for September was our first event for the fall semester with our transfer students. And we had about 50 students to attend. This was an in-person event, and we held it over in the Rapley Student Center. So 50 out of the 200 attended for the meet and greet. The National Transfer Student Week, most of those activities were virtual. And with that, the attendance varied anywhere from 15 to 30 students attending. And again, these were virtual, and we had some collaboration with other departments such as our career development services, who assisted us with a virtual workshop, telling students how to take their interdisciplinary studies and focus them into careers. And we also partnered with our financial aid department to talk about the use of financial aid and the availability of scholarships. And with that, we partner with Project Success to have a money management piece to go along with that as well.
Thank you very much. I'm hoping that you all are looking at doing that again. What I'm hearing, the reason why I asked that, because I know that would help you tremendously. Because the more students that are involved in it, then they'll go back and tell someone else about it so that they can come the next time we go. And that's the reason why I'm asking that. So, seeing something similar to this work, so that's the reason why I'm asking.
I have one question also. If we had an unlimited number of qualified students to consider, what would be maybe the maximum projected rate of growth or number of additional students we could absorb each year? Do we have some estimate of what that might be? In other words, beyond that number right now, we would not really have the facilities for, okay.
We are in the midst of our 10-year strategic plan, and that plan at that point, based upon where we were in the enrollment, looked at 6,000. That obviously is going to be revisited. At one point, there was some discussion about going to 8,000, with a considerable number of those additional coming through our, not all of those on campus, but those also being with online experiences. Relative to the numbers that you house on campus, percentage-wise, we are far beyond what most institutions have. And that's a difficult concept sometimes for people to grasp, because we have persons on waiting lists and et cetera. But if you look at our institution compared to other institutions, percentage-wise, we have a lot more students that we provide housing for on campus. So we still will be able to provide there. You could, and what I don't want to do is give a number, but I can say that there is room for growth beyond that 6,000 number where we are. And obviously, when they begin to look at the strategic plan going forward for the next, because it's time to revise it now. It's 2025, getting ready for the reaffirmation. It will take you through reaffirmation, but then it's time to do another strategic plan. At that point, the institution reevaluates what its goal ought to be in terms of enrollment and et cetera for the next 10 years. So that's kind of the short of the answer right now in terms of where it is. There is room for growth with the facilities that are there beyond where we are, but I would not want to speculate specifically what that number is until that strategic plan is revisited.
We should, as trustees, not be holding back on trying to encourage people to apply.
Absolutely not. Yeah. Absolutely not. We can certainly accommodate them. I wanted to go back to one other thing and ask in the future when we would give the enrollment report to give some context to that report. And by context, I mean when I look at the numbers and see we're down perhaps by about 200 students, I don't have a way of determining whether that's good, whether that's bad. Are we functioning basically as everyone else is? And so what I'd suggest in the future, give some context. I quickly looked up the fall enrollments from the Alabama Commission on Higher Education just to see what we look like within the state. And of the institutions, the comprehensive senior institutions, 9 of the institutions had enrollment decline. only 4 had an increase. So when you look at our enrollment, decrease was about 1.3%. It is not out of the context of what is happening within the state. Now, I did not get the information for other HBCUs, but the number in itself, I said, well, you know, we had a decrease. Yes, we did, but then there's also a decrease in the system. So we are decreasing along with the system. Obviously, that's the impact of COVID. So as you report in the future, be sure that they put some context around it so we can see where we are in relationship to the rest of the industry.
And I just wanted to add that, with community university on the online experience, because, one of my students, a former high school student, who was out in she was able to utilize the online experience, because she couldn't come back from Montgomery, but, she was excited to be able to continue her education while being in Montgomery. So I think we can expand that more, and probably make some more growth in that numbers without, worrying about the housing, you know, how that's not affecting housing. So thank you for that.
If there are no questions, we definitely appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairpersons Johnson, Cole, and Robinson. That concludes our student affairs presentation. Trustee Robinson has a presentation he wants to make, and we'll do it before going to our next session. Trustee Robinson?
Thank you, President Pro Tem. Just a reminder, trustees, to check your email. We need you to go ahead and reserve and purchase your tickets. There's a limited amount, and we want to make sure the trustees are in on that allotment. Again, it's December the 11th for this event. It's at 6:00 p.m. The master of ceremony is comedian Ricky Smiley. Special music performance will be R&B Vibes Live. And just keep in mind, temperature checks will occur, sanitizing stations, face masks required, social distancing will be enforced. There are various sponsorships. There are 3. There's a silver sponsorship, bronze sponsorship, and Bulldog ticket. The silver is at $5,000, the bronze at $2,500, and the Bulldog ticket is at $100. And Pro Tem, if you want to kind of elaborate on that, if I need to go into detail on what that offers, I can. So I yield to you.
Go ahead, Trustee Robinson. And,
okay, for the sponsorship for $5,000, that's a half-page advertisement. That's 1 table of 8 and 2 copies of the stellar and soon to be sold out book entitled The Hugueni Era, 2009 to 2021. The bronze sponsorship is at $2,500, and that's a 1/4-page advertisement, 4 tickets, and 1 copy of the book entitled The Hugueni Era. And the Bulldog ticket is a single ticket. So those are the various levels of sponsorships you will see when you go to the Eventbrite. Over. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you, Trustee Robinson. I'm going to commit the Board of Trustees to a silver sponsorship. Members of this board can contribute whatever they want, but we will be at the silver sponsorship level minimally. Okay. Thank you, Trustee Robinson. That concludes our student affairs session. We will go into our next session. Trustee Johnson Cole.
Good morning, everybody. So this is the governance section, and committee members consist of Dr. Jeanette Jones, Mr. Chris Robinson, Mr. Frank Williams, and Mr. Richard Crunkleton. We have 3 items on the agenda, and we're going to kind of take them out of order that they're listed, but we'll have the ethics update first from Attorney Stakely, followed by the organizational chart, which I believe is coming from President Hugueni. Is that correct?
And I'll yield to President-elect Williams.
Perfect. And then, if I'm in order, I believe we will then go into executive session to discuss the contract.
You okay? All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
I just want to briefly, this morning, overview some issues that relate to ethics and conflicts of interest. It's a topic about which you, as members of the board, need to be focused on an ongoing basis, not because it's a problem or an issue, but it's one that obviously you want to avoid. I have provided a packet of information for your later review. I've had various suggestions as to whether it's a wake-up packet of information or whether you might want to read it in preparation for bed at night. But it is nevertheless information that's important to help digest. What I've given you are basically three snippets of information. The first is the portion of the Alabama A&M enabling statute, section 1649-29, which defines certain statutory conflicts of interest that specifically relate to the business of Alabama A&M University, pardon me. And the second is a portion of our bylaws. These are the bylaws that have been formulated and adopted by this board to define its relationship to one another. And then finally, the most voluminous portion of this is the Code of Ethics for Public Officials, part of the Alabama Code as well. Now, what I'd like to do, and I'll try to do it literally very briefly, is just kind of outline some of the concepts and the relationships that the statutory and other framework establishes. And I invite you, if you have any questions, to interrupt, to just ask the question, because I do intend to be at a top level as opposed to drilling down into specific circumstances. The statute that's part of A&M enabling statute basically identifies two different types of conflicts of interest, which, if violated, could result in removal from the Board of Trustees. That would be a matter that only the governor or the board acting as a board could do. These two different conflicts of interest: one is that it's unlawful for any member of the board to derive financial benefit in any form from a contract or transaction affecting the interest of the university, or to procure or be a party in any way to procuring. All right, so one is financial interest, and that's what we've just talked about. Secondly, is to inappropriately interfere with the process of employing, of the university employing its employees. So one, the obvious, and that is, you're not supposed to inappropriately profit from the business of Alabama A&M. But secondly, you're not supposed to interfere with the employment process within the university either, whether it's to interfere on behalf of a relative or any other person. So there are appropriate ways, and there is a qualification that says, except through the prescribed procedures for such purposes. Obviously, you can make recommendations. Obviously, you can do the same things the general public can do, and that's appropriate, but it's not appropriate to, I know that you're in a position as a member of the Board of Trustees that people will contact you and they'll ask favors. And your desire to act appropriately and be gracious and deferential to them cannot lead you to step out of the normal processes in either of these categories. there are also some prohibitions that if you look at the codes of conduct or ethics, we're looking at those which govern your conduct while you are a serving member of the Board of Trustees. And there are also some that impact once you leave service as a member of the Board of Trustees. So continuing for a moment to look at those which govern your conduct while a member of the Board of Trustees, I would direct your attention to that portion of our bylaws, which is Article 2 of our bylaws. I've also, as I say, copied, giving you that portion of the copy, and you'll see that under Section 1, conflict of interest, our bylaws just specifically incorporate the statutory provision that I've just covered with you. Also, it provides a procedure by which if you have a question about whether certain conduct is appropriate or not, there's a process or procedure by which you can pre-clear that activity so as to avoid any later suggestion that there was impropriety. And you see that, and that is by disclosing it, presenting it to the President Pro Tem or the Executive Committee, which have the discretion under those circumstances to issue, in essence, an informal opinion or declaration that either it is or is not a conflict of interest. So there is a process by which that can be done. The removal, however, from your position as a member of the Board of Trustees can only be done basically by the governor's office, and it is for violations of the statutory provisions, which if we look at Section 3 of our bylaws, there's a broader, more expansive standard that the trustees themselves have adopted as part of your code of conduct. And I would encourage you to take the time to read through that, because when this was done, I think a lot of thought was put into it to help establish the proper relationships between members of the Board of Trustees, and recognizing what your responsibilities as a trustee are, to be informed, to be engaged, what your responsibilities are to one another, which is, I have had the privilege in times past to speak to you, and I think it's important that there be a measure of respect and deference that each of you affords other members of the board, regardless of whether you share identical views on an issue or not. So that, for example, there's an express statement that as under Section 3 of the Code of Ethics, paragraph 5, it says to vote and speak according to one's individual conviction. You have to be willing to support the majority decision of the board and work with fellow board members in a spirit of cooperation, so that there is an iterative, robust process by which decisions are made. And once those decisions are made, the board then comes together to support and ensure the success, if you will, of those decisions rather than undermine them. But you can see the other provisions that are designed to help you think about how you relate to one another, how you relate to the administration, and how the board itself relates to the larger university constituencies. And then there is a procedure for responding to a breach of this code of ethics that's found in your bylaws. The board itself doesn't have the legal authority, if you will, to remove members of the board for violation of these provisions, but it does have the authority to censure. So that's the remedy that's available, and the process for doing that is set forth in here, and that is that someone brings forth a charge. The process that's described is an iterative process. It's one, we're not looking to create problems. The first step is to try to resolve it by communication and communication alone. But if there's a continuing issue or problem, it can be brought to the full board and dealt with by the board. Then the final aspect of Alabama ethics law, if you will, to which I will just very briefly again draw your attention, is the Code of Ethics for Public Officials. Members of the Board of Trustees fall within the definition of public officials, and therefore this act applies. And there are, again, basically conceptually, two different aspects of your conduct that could be subject to this legislative act. The first is the use of the office as a member of the Board of Trustees for personal financial gain, and that really overlaps with the section we've already talked about. It would be inappropriate to enter into a contract or to try to influence the award of contracts, et cetera, for gain. You're all familiar with that. Another element, however, with which you might be less familiar is that there is a provision that applies once a member of the Board of Trustees leaves the Board of Trustees. It applies equally while you're on the board, but it continues after you leave the board, and that is the use of what is described as confidential information gained in the course of or by reason of his or her position or employment in any way that could result in financial gain other than the normal salary that you would get from doing your job. So this is a type of conduct that, first of all, recognizes that while you're trustees, you'll be exposed to and come into possession of important confidential information, which you need to be very careful in helping to maintain the confidentiality, not to disclose it to third parties who might use it for potential financial gain. And then finally, pardon me, not to use it yourselves for those purposes. And that commitment to do so under this statute continues for a 2-year period following departure from the board. I know that was a very quick and very dry presentation of that, but I wanted to just truly overview and ask whether there are any questions or issues that you would like to address. Thank you for the privilege of doing this.
Thank you, Attorney Stakely. Since there are no questions, we'll move next to the organizational chart. No question.
Is there electrons on that, or is that just a hard copy?
I'm sorry, it is a hard copy, and I'll make sure that the people online are provided with a copy. The 3 documents: one is a section of our enabling statute, 2 is a section of our bylaws, which I think I provided in hard copy last time we were together in a notebook, and then the third is the ethics code itself. But I'll make sure it gets sent to the trustees who were not physically present.
And Rod, you might want to take this opportunity to make sure you get the forms back on the.
Well, on an annual basis, thank you, Mr. President. On an annual basis, I know you get an inquiry from me through the direction of the President Pro Tem to fill out a form that certifies that there are no conflicts of interest. And so I have sent that out in advance of this meeting. If you did not get one, please let me know, because I want to make sure that we have successfully communicated that. But secondly, if you have and have not yet had the opportunity to review and respond to it, I would encourage you to do so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee
President, I
Gold.
was gonna say, President Hugini, I believe you indicated you were gonna defer
Yes.
to Provost Williams.
The Provost Williams is going to deal with the proposed revisions to the organizational chart. Dr. Williams?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the information provided via your binders, trustees, as well as in the president's box, we provided a series of charts. One was the AMU organizational chart prior to 2016. The second one was our current organizational chart, and then a proposed organizational chart with some red line or highlight changes. And then we provided organizational charts of the current academic affairs and research, as well as the Division of Academic Affairs and the Division of Research proposed. Our first request are a series of revisions. Currently, we have senior personnel officers, vice president for fiscal affairs, also served as a senior personnel officer for the non-academic divisions. And for academic and research division, the provost served as senior personnel officer. And for cooperative extension programs, the administrator of those programs serves as a senior personnel officer. What we're asking is for us to not have a position, or that being the position title, but to be able to designate who the senior personnel officers of the various areas are, versus it being in a title as we move forward with any organizational changes. That's the first request for revision. The second request is on the organizational chart now and prior, we have an internal auditor. And what we would like to do is change that position to the chief of staff / compliance officer. The third request is currently the position of provost is position titled Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs and Research. We would like to eliminate the research responsibilities from that position and revert back to Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs. And the fourth request is we have in the org chart an unfilled position of Associate Vice President for Research and Sponsored Programs. We would like to revise that position to be entitled Associate Vice President for Governmental Affairs, Relations, and Communications. So those are the first series of request revisions of positions in the organizational chart. Chairman.
Okay. You all have heard the request as it relates to revising those positions. Are there any questions?
Let me make a comment. Most chief executives, I believe, like to have an organizational structure that fit their management style. And when Dr. Guinea came in, that was a reorganization of the org chart at that time. So this is pretty much common, normal, and the expected thing of a chief executive.
And I'd like to add, if reason we provided you the organizational chart prior to and current is because much of this is going back to the prior to. So
what he's trying to say in a very politically correct way.
Thank you, sir.
Is that the position, particularly that of research, we had difficulty filling that position. And I asked the provost to serve in that capacity on an interim basis, which he consented to do. And that temporary ended up, we still had not filled the position. And so therefore I came to the board and asked the board to make that a part of his title, but it was never intended that the provost and the research vice president would be the same. You don't find that at institutions, that there's two separate positions. So what is being recommended is that we simply go back to what is normal. That is, you have a provost and vice president for academic affairs, and then you have, particularly for an institution the size of Alabama A&M University and our complexity, you have a separate person that deals with a vice president for research. So we're just going back to where it was. What evolved was just the inability of filling that position at that time.
So I got a question, Dr. Williams or Dr. Gini. So it looks like we're adding 7 new positions? Is that what I'm looking at?
No,
On
and
the
we'll,
org chart?
as we go down here, you'll see what a balance is in terms of the trade-offs.
Oh, okay.
We're actually slightly reducing the size of the administration.
Oh, okay.
As well as the overall cost.
Okay. That was my question, just making sure that we were in the budgetary cost of in our additional org chart. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we'll entertain a motion to accept that request.
I will second that motion.
I need a motion first. But no, from my committee members, Dr. Jeanette Jones, Mr. Chris Robinson, Mr. Frank Williams, Mr. Richard Crunkleton.
I move that we approve that request.
And I second.
Thank you. It's been moved and properly seconded that we accept the request as it relates to revising the positions on the organizational chart. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposers have the same right. Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. The second request is to eliminate positions, which goes to Trustee Gainey's question. 2 of these are 0.25 positions, adding up to 1/2 of a full-time equivalent. That is the Executive Director of Economic Development, which was a part-time responsibility, as well as the Director of Governmental Affairs and Communications. As you can see, we are adding up top, revising a current position to encompass those responsibilities. And so thus there's no need for that 0.25 position, because those responsibilities will revert to the revised position that we just approved. Also, finally, to eliminate the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer position from the organizational chart.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Just clarity for me. So the Department of Governmental Affairs and Communication, that goes under what? Would that be under Vice President of Research and Economic Development?
Well, currently, that's where we're placing it, because one of our primary initiatives will be working with legislators in Montgomery, as well as Washington, to expand our footprint and sponsor programs, grants, and contracts, but also to get legislative support on various other initiatives. As you know, the funding for HBCUs in so many areas, department and agencies, has exploded, and we need someone on the ground to try to take advantage of some of that.
So we're just merging that into one position?
Putting the responsibilities in that position that we just revised up top. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Dr. Williams, can you hear me?
I think someone's asking a question.
Dr. Williams.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Hey, I had a question, and I think you may have answered it already. And my concern is just making sure that these are your, and obviously you may be answering this question, that you feel confident going back, and these positions are going to make you real effective so that you can be very successful. Can you just give a little more thought on that? How these are going to help you be very successful, because it's really important that we're doing exactly what you need. And are you confident in these things that you want in these positions, going back to the original platform? And are we missing anything that you need to make sure that you're getting everything that you need to be effective?
Well, I think as the chairman said, and Dr. Eugenie reiterated, some of this are tweaks and changes that would fit our administrative style, but also the overall platform of what we would like to focus on moving forward. particularly from a grants and contracts perspective, since we are in Huntsville and we know how important that is in our city. And so we like to focus on that and invest in it. But in this scenario, we're not cutting or adding, we're reorganizing. And I think we need to really, really make that point. And this is not the overall be-all to end-all in terms of changes or alterations to the existing chart. This is just the first iteration of a few positions. We'll come back in subsequent meetings and deal with some other divisions. But two of these positions are only 0.25 FTE. And we have a position that we are revising, which will be a 1 FTE, a full-time position that will focus on those two areas. So that investment, we anticipate will make us more effective in those areas. And the Executive Vice President, Chief Operating Officer, some of those responsibilities will be encompassed in the Chief of Staff Compliance Officer, but at a lesser level of responsibility from a management perspective. So yes, we do think we'll be more effective and efficient without bloating the administration. And that's one of our charges, is not to bloat the administration and add additional costs, but make sure that we are both cost effective and efficient. So I hope I answered your question, Trustee.
Yes, great job. Thank you.
Well, then, President-elect Williams, you assume then that this would be just the first iteration of your organizational proposals and requests?
Yes, sir. Some of this is dealing directly with the President's office and academic affairs and research. But if you notice, there's nothing relative to finance division, student affairs division, advancement division, athletics, and the like.
If there are no other questions, I'll entertain a motion to accept the request to eliminate the 3 positions delineated.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the request to eliminate positions for Executive Director of Economic Development, 0.25 FTE, Director of Governmental Affairs and Communications, 0.25 FTE, and the Executive Vice President, Chief Operating Officer.
Thank you.
Second.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you. It's been moved and properly seconded that we accept the request to eliminate the positions. I call for the question. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. We have our third request is to add 2 positions. One currently exists. We have not had board approval for that to be added to the organizational chart. And that is a position of Special Assistant to the President for Strategic Planning and Initiatives. That role is currently occupied by Dr. Melinda Swoop, and we would like to formally add it to our organizational chart. As we're going into SAC-COC, she's also the SAC-COC liaison, so we think it would be appropriate to make sure that it's properly designated on the organizational chart.
You think so?
Second request is to now go back and add, as we said prior to 2010-11, the Vice President for Research and Economic Development. And we're adding the term economic development to that term because of various state initiatives that were actually started under Governor Bentley. And Governor Bentley asked all of the research institutions to add economic development to that title because of the innovation activities within the state. We did not do that, but we would like to make that correction at this time and add that position of Vice President for Research and Economic Development. And you have the proposed chart, organizational chart for that division in your packet as well. And so I'd like to go back to that designation. We did not add 1890 programs. We will leave a cooperative extension program in the organizational chart as it is currently.
Any questions, comments?
I am especially pleased that we have a position for research and economic development.
Mhm. Okay. At this time, the chair will entertain a motion to accept the request to add those positions.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the request to add the following positions: Special Assistant to the President for Strategic Planning and Initiatives. That's an addition of the position to the organizational chart. And Vice President for Research and Economic Development, which is a reinstatement of the position.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you. It's been moved and properly seconded that we accept the request to add the positions, Special Assistant to the President for Strategic Planning and Initiatives and Vice President for Research and Economic Development. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I apologize. Trustee Robinson? Did you have a question?
No, I said aye.
Oh, any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Dr. Jones. I don't know if you know, Dr. Jones was the inaugural Vice President for Research at this research institution and helped set in motion some of the things that we've been able to take advantage of over the last 40 years. Thank you. Now, you know I had to get one in because, you know, this is not a funeral.
You'll get them later, Dr. Jones.
You got
it.
You got it.
Thank you so much for that presentation. And thank you all committee members for your work. I think at this time, if it's appropriate, we should convene to executive session to discuss the presidential contract. No?
My understanding is that the request is for an executive session, pardon me, to consult with legal counsel.
That is-
Concerning a potential for a contract that university may consider entering into.
Thank you, Attorney Stakely. That is in fact the request to enter into executive session to consult legal counsel.
In light of that request, I opine that is an appropriate reason to have an executive session and that we may do so. If the board as a whole, or if the committee elects to do so.
Okay, so, and we need a motion for that, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Motion to go into executive session.
Okay, I move that we go into executive session to discuss a contract.
For,
Second.
With legal counsel.
If the motion is to consult with legal counsel concerning a potential contract.
Yes, that's the
Okay.
motion.
I second.
Thank you. It's been moved and probably seconded that we enter into executive session to discuss a potential contract with legal counsel. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
So we are.
What do you all want to say, committee? 30 minutes?
30 minutes.
30 minutes.
I request that President Getty be available to